Hey all, so this is the second video of the book for the oral exam guide. I'm going to do chapter 2 is the airworthiness requirements. So here we go. A. Aircraft certificates and documents. Number 1. What documents are required on board an aircraft prior to flight? Arrow, yeah, that makes sense. Airworthiness certificate, registration certificate, radio license if operating outside of the US, um, operating limitations, AFM, POH, and supplement placards, Americans, and W rate and balance data, current. Exam tip. During the practical test, your evaluator may wish to examine the various required aircraft documents. During the pre-flight inspection, as well as the currency of any aeronautical charts, EFB, data, etc. on board the aircraft prior to the test. Verify that all the necessary aircraft documentation, onboard databases, and charts are current and available. Number 2. What is an airworthiness certificate? It's the certificate that you get from the inspector. Like if you do any repairs or inspections, it basically says that the ground crew says that this airplane's safe to fly. Let's see what the book says. An airworthiness certificate is issued by the FAA to an aircraft that has been proven to meet the minimum design and manufacturing requirements and is in condition for safe operation. So yeah, basically what I said. Under any circumstances, the aircraft must meet the requirement of the original type certificate, or it is no longer airworthy. These certificates come in two different classifications: standard airworthiness and special airworthiness. Number 3. What is the difference between standard and special airworthiness certificates? Standard airworthiness certificates, while paper, are issued for normal, utility, aerobatic, and commuter or transport category aircraft. Special airworthiness certificates, pink paper, are issued for primary, restricted, or limited category aircraft and light sport aircraft. So that makes it sound like military aircraft. What is an experimental airworthiness certificate? A special airworthiness certificate is in the experimental category. It's issued to operate an aircraft that does not have a type certificate or does not conform to its type certificate yet, is in a condition for safe operation. Additionally, this certificate is issued to operate a primary category kit-built aircraft that was assembled without the supervision and quality control of the production certificate holder. Number 5. Does an airworthiness certificate have an expiration date? No. A standard airworthiness certificate remains valid for as long as the aircraft meets its approved type design, is in a condition for safe operation, and the maintenance, preventative maintenance, and alterations are performed in accordance with 14 CFR Parts 21, 43, and 91. Number 6. Where must the airworthiness certificate be located? The certificate must be displayed at the cabin or cockpit entrance so that it is legible to passengers or crew. Number 7. For an aircraft to be considered airworthy, what two conditions must be met? A. The aircraft must conform to its type design, type certificate. This is attained when the required and proper components are installed consistent with the drawings, specifications, and other data that are part of the type certificate. Conformity includes applicable supplemental type certificates and field approval alterations. B. The aircraft must be in a condition for safe operation, referring to the condition of the aircraft in relation to wear and deterioration, wear and tear in other words. Number 8. Explain how a pilot determines if an aircraft conforms to its approved type design and its condition for safe operation. A. For type design, a pilot must determine that the maintenance, preventative maintenance, and alterations have been performed in accordance to 14 CFR Parts 21, 43, and 91, and that the aircraft is registered in the US The pilot does this by ensuring that all required inspections, maintenance, preventative maintenance, repairs, and alterations have been appropriately documented in the aircraft's maintenance records. Yeah, each plane has a book where anything is done. The mechanic or whatever has to record what was done when and what parts. B. For safe operation, the pilot conducts a thorough pre-flight inspection of the aircraft for wear and deterioration, structural damage, fluid leaks, tire wear, inoperative instruments and equipment, etc. If an unsafe condition exists or inoperative instruments or equipment are found, the pilot uses the guidance in 14 CFR 91.213 for handling the inoperative equipment. Number 9. What records or documents should be checked to determine that the owner or operator of an aircraft has complied with all requirements or required inspections and airworthiness directives? The maintenance records and aircraft and engine logbooks. Each owner or operator of an aircraft shall ensure that the maintenance personnel make appropriate entries in the aircraft maintenance records, indicating the aircraft has been approved for return to service. So, yeah, a plane doesn't go unless the mechanic says so. Number 10. Who is responsible for ensuring that the aircraft is maintained in an airworthy condition? The owner or operator of an aircraft is primarily responsible for the maintaining of an aircraft in an airworthy condition. 11. Describe some of the responsibilities an aircraft owner has pertaining to aircraft documents, maintenance, and inspections of their aircraft. Aircraft owners must A. have a current airworthiness certificate and aircraft registration in the aircraft. Continued. B. Maintain the aircraft in an airworthy condition, including compliance with all applicable airworthiness directives. C. Ensure maintenance is properly recorded. D. Keep abreast of current regulations concerning the operation of that aircraft. E. Notify FAA Civil Aviation Registry immediately of any change of permanent mailing address or of the sale or export of the aircraft, or of the loss of citizenship. F. Have a current FCC radio station license if required, with radios including emergency locator transmitter (ELT) if operated outside of the United States. Number 12. What are airworthiness directives? An airworthiness directive (AD) is the medium by which the FAA notifies aircraft owners and the other potentially interested persons of an unsafe conditions that may exist because of design defects, maintenance, or other causes, and specifies the conditions under which the product may continue to be operated. ADs are regulatory in nature, and compliance is mandatory. It is the aircraft owner's or operator's responsibility to ensure all compliance with all pertinent ADs. So basically, if there's a recall or if there's a notice out, basically it's the same as that. Number 13. What are two types of ADs? ADs are divided into two categories: those of an emergency nature requiring immediate compliance prior to further flight, and those a less urgent nature requiring compliance within a specific period of time. Number 14. When are emergency ADs issued? An emergency AD is issued when an unsafe condition exists that requires immediate action by an owner or operator. The intent of an emergency AD is to rapidly correct an urgent safety of flight situation. All known owners and operators of affected U.S. registered aircraft or those aircraft that have an affected product installed will be sent up a copy of an emergency AD. Exam tip. ADs and recurring ADs. Be capable of finding and explaining the status of all ADs and recurring ADs that exist for your aircraft. Locate and tab prior to the practice test. Number 15. What is the type of certificate what is a type certificate data sheet? The FAA issues a type certificate when a new aircraft engine, propeller, etc. is found to meet safety standards set forth by the FAA. The type certificate data sheets, TCDS, lists the specifications, conditions, and limitations under which airworthiness requirements were met for the specific product, such as an engine make and model, fuel type, engine limits, airspeed limits, and maximum weight and minimum crew, etc. 16. What is a supplemental type certificate? A supplemental type certificate, STC, is the FAA's approval of a major change in the type design of a previously approved type certificate product. The certificate authorizes an alteration to an airframe, engine, or component that has been granted an approved type certificate. Sometimes alterations are made that are not specified or authorized by TCDS. When that condition exists, an STC will be issued. STCs are considered a part of the permanent records of an aircraft and should be maintained as part of that aircraft's logs. Number 17. What is an aircraft registration certificate? Basically the same as a car's registration, like our plates used to have stickers on. Before an aircraft can be flown legally, it must be registered with the FAA Aircraft Registry. The certificate of aircraft registration, which is issued to the owner as evidence of the registration, so basically the same thing, must be carried in the aircraft at all times. It's basically the FAA's version of a license plate and tag number, so you have that and you have to have it with it. Number 18. Does the aircraft registration certificate have an expiration date? Yes. A certificate of aircraft registration is issued in accordance with 14 CFR 4731. It expires 3 years after the last day of the month in which it was issued. A temporary certification of registration is valid for no more than 90 days after that date of the applicant signs the application. 19. Where can you find information on the placards and making information required to be in the airplane? The principal source of information for identifying the required airplane flight manuals, approved manual materials, markings, and placards is the FAA Type Certificate Data Sheet or aircraft specification issued for each plane, eligible for an airworthiness certificate. The required placards are also reproduced in the limitations section of the AFM, or as directed by an AD. Number 20. What are several examples of placards and markings required in the airplane? Placards: day, night, VFR, IFR placard, flight maneuvers permitted placard, caution, control lock removed before starting, maneuvering speed, compass calibration card, etc. Markings: airspeed indicator markings, cockpit control markings, fuel, oil, and coolant filler openings, etc. B. Aircraft maintenance requirements. Number 1. What are the required tests and inspections to be performed on an aircraft? Include inspections for IFR. So they use the acronym Aviator, see, but instead of an I, they put a number 1. So for A, annual inspection within the preceding 12 calendar months. Another A, airworthiness directives and life-limited parts complied with as required. V, VOR equipment check every 30 days. Number 1, or I, 100-hour inspection if used for hire or flight instruction in aircraft CFI provides. A, altimeter altitude reporting equipment and static pressure systems tested and inspected every 24 calendar months. T. Transponder tests and inspections every 24 calendar months. E. Emergency locator transmitter operation and battery condition inspected every 12 calendar months. Exam tip. Be prepared to locate all the required inspections, ADs, life-limited parts, etc. in the aircraft and engine logbooks, and be able to determine when the next inspections are due. Create an aircraft status sheet that indicates the status of all required inspections, ADs, life-limited parts, etc., and or use post-it notes to tab the specific pages in the aircraft and engine logbooks. Write the due date of the next inspection on the post-it note. 2. What is an annual inspection and which aircraft are required to have an annual inspections? That's the MOT. We did this yesterday. That all aircraft needs to do it. It's like aircraft needs to be inspected every year at least once. Okay, so the answer says an annual inspection is a complete inspection of an aircraft and engine required by the regulations and is required to be accomplished every 12 months on all certified aircraft. Only an A&P technician holding an inspection authorization can conduct an annual inspection. So yeah, basically what I said. Number 3. What aircraft are required to have 100-hour inspections? Any aircraft that are used for hire, CFI, flight instructions, teaching someone to fly and stuff like that. All aircraft under 12,500 pounds except turbo-powered multi-engine airplanes and turbine-powered rotor used to carry passengers for hire. B. Aircraft used for flight instruction for hire when provided by the person given the flight instruction. So I got B right, but I didn't get A. Number 4. If an aircraft is operated for hire, is it required to have a 100-hour inspection as well as an annual inspection? Yes. Yes, an aircraft is operated for hire. It must have a 100-hour inspection as well as an annual inspection when due. If not operated for hire, only an annual inspection is required. So if we use our own plane to do the training, and that means that it doesn't need a 100-hour check. Interesting. What is the difference between an annual inspection and a 100-hour inspection? Well, we already know that the 100-hour is already done if the plane is for hire or under 12,500, and it's a plane by the instructor. The annual is done yearly and it's required no matter what. Oh, okay. So the main answer it gives is the main difference is who is allowed to perform these inspections. Only an AP mechanic with an inspection authorization can perform an annual inspection. 100-hour inspections may be performed by any A&P mechanic, no IA required. That's kind of a trick question. What's the difference between an annual? It doesn't say. Oh well, whatever. Number 6. If an aircraft has been on a schedule of inspection every 100 hours, under what conditions may it continue to operate beyond the 100 hours without a new inspection? The 100-hour limitation may be exceeded by not more than 10 hours while en route to a place where the inspection can be done. The excess time used to reach a place where the inspection can be done must be included in computing the next 100 hours of time in service. So if you reach the 100-hour mark and you have to go somewhere to do the inspection, you've got to include those additional hours. Okay. If the annual inspection date has passed, can an aircraft be operated to a location where the inspection can be performed? An aircraft overdue on an annual inspection may be operated under a special flight permit issued by the FAA for the purpose of flying the aircraft to a location where the annual inspection can be performed. However, all applicable ADs that are due must be complied with before flight. What are special flight permits and when are they necessary? A special flight permit may be issued for an aircraft that may not currently meet applicable airworthiness requirements, but is capable of a safe flight. These permits are typically issued for the following: flying an aircraft to a base where repairs, alterations, or maintenance are performed, or to a point of storage, delivering or exporting an aircraft, production, flight testing, new product aircraft, evacuating aircraft from areas of impending danger, or E, conducting customer demonstration flights in new production aircraft that have satisfactorily completed production flight tests. Number 9. How are special flight permits obtained? If a special flight permit is needed, assistance and the necessary forms may be obtained from the local FSDO or designated Airworthiness Representative DAR. Calls forms, more forms. And number 10. After aircraft inspections have been made and defects have been repaired, who is responsible for determining that the aircraft is in an airworthy condition? The pilot in command of a civil aircraft is responsible for determining whether the aircraft is in a condition for safe flight. The pilot in command shall discontinue the flight when an unairworthy mechanical, electrical, or structural conditions occur. That bit confused me because I was going to say the mechanic has to sign. If the mechanic has to approve all the work he does and sign it, otherwise it doesn't get done. So, but I see. Number 10 could have been a little bit more clear, put it that way. I mean, it doesn't specify the mechanic or the pilot in command. 11. What regulations apply concerning the operation of an aircraft that has had alterations or repairs which may have substantially affected its operation in flight? No person may operate or carry passengers in any aircraft that has undergone maintenance, preventative maintenance, rebuilding, or alteration that may have applicably changed its flight characteristics or substantially affected its operation in flight, and to approve appropriately rated pilot with at least private pilot certificate. A. Flies the aircraft. B. Makes operational check of the maintenance performed or alterations made. And C. Logs the flight in the aircraft records. 12. Can a pilot legally conduct flight operations with known inoperative equipment on board? Yes, under specific conditions. 14 CFR Part 91 describes acceptable methods for the operation of an aircraft with certain inoperative instruments and equipment that are not essential for a safe flight. They are, page continues. A. Operation of an aircraft with a minimum equipment list, MEL, as authorized by 14 CFR 1991.213A, or B. Operation of an aircraft without an MEL under 14 CFR 91.213D. Exam tip. Know the regulation well. Unfamiliarity with 14 CFR 91.213 is a common weakness of applicants at all levels. You must demonstrate that you know this regulation and how to apply it. Number 13. What limitations apply to aircraft operations conducted using the deferral provision of 14 CFR 91213D? When an inoperative equipment is found during pre-flight or prior to departure, the decision should be to cancel the flight, obtain maintenance prior to the flight, or to defer the item or equipment. Maintenance deferrals are not used for in-flight discrepancies. The manufacturer's AFM or POH procedures are to be used in those situations. Number 14. During the pre-flight inspection, if an aircraft that doesn't have an MEL, you notice that an instrument or equipment item is inoperative, describe how you would determine if the aircraft is still airworthy for flight. I would ask myself the following questions to determine if I can legally fly the plane with an inoperative equipment item. A. Are the inoperative instruments or equipment part of the VFR day type certification? B. Are the inoperative instruments or equipment listed as required on the aircraft's equipment list of kinds of operations equipment list, KOEL, for the type of flight operations being conducted? C. Are the inoperative instruments or equipment required by 14 CFR 91.205, 91.207, or any other rule of 14 CFR Part 91 for the specific kind of flight operation being conducted? For example, VFR, IFR, day, night. D. Are the inoperative instruments or equipment required to be operational by an AD? If the answer is yes to any of these questions, the aircraft is not airworthy, and maintenance is required before I can fly. If the answer is no to any of these questions, then the inoperative instruments or equipment must be removed by an A&P from the aircraft or deactivated and placarded inoperative. Note, see Appendix 3 for further explanation of this regulation. So basically, if you have something that's not working and you don't need it for the flight, you can need a mechanic to tape it up, say, inoperative. Exam tip. If an instrument or equipment item is inoperative in your aircraft, be able to explain how you will determine if the aircraft is airworthy and legal for flight. 15. What are minimum equipment lists? We just learned that the minimum equipment needed to be able to fly legally. The minimum equipment list is a precise listing of instruments, equipment, and procedures that allows an aircraft to be operated under specific conditions with inoperative equipment. The MEL is the specific inoperative equipment document for a particular make and model aircraft by serial and registration numbers. The FAA approved MEL includes only those items of equipment that the FAA deems may be inoperative and still maintain an acceptable level of safety within appropriate conditions and limitations. Note, do not confuse an MEL with an aircraft's equipment list. They are not the same. Number 16. For an aircraft with an approved MEL, explain the decision sequence a pilot would use after discovering the precision lights are inoperative. With an approved MEL, if the precision lights were discovered inoperative prior to a daytime flight, the pilot would make an entry in the maintenance record of the discrepancy record provided for that purpose. The item is either then repaired or deferred in accordance with the MEL. Upon confirming that daytime flight with inoperative precision lights is acceptable in accordance with the provisions of the MEL, the pilot would leave the precision light switch off. open the circuit breaker or whatever action is called for in the procedures document, and placard the precision light switch as inoperative. Number 17. Explain the limitations that apply to aircraft operations being conducted using an MEL. The use of an MEL for a small, non-turbine powered airplane and operated under Part 91 allows for the deferral of an inoperative item or equipment. The FAA considers an approved MEL to be a supplemental type certificate (STC) issued to an aircraft by serial number and registration number. Once an operator requests an MEL and a letter of authorization (LOA) is issued by the FAA, then the MEL becomes mandatory for that aircraft. All maintenance deferrals must be done in accordance with the terms and conditions of the MEL and the operator-generated procedures document. 18. What instruments and equipment are required for VFR day flight? The acronym is I was trying to read the bold letters. It's tomato flames. Interesting. For VFR flight during the day, the following instruments and equipment are required: A. Anti-collision light system, aviation red or white for small aircraft planes certified after March 11th, 1996. T. Tachometer for each engine. O for oil pressure gauge for each engine. M for M manifold pressure gauge. A for altimeter. T for temperature gauge. O again for oil temperature gauge for each air-cooled engine. F for fuel gauge indicating the quantity in each tank. F for flotation gear if operated for high over water beyond power off gliding distance from shore. L, landing gear position indicator if the airplane has retractable gear. Don't need to worry about that with a Cessna Skyhawk. A, airspeed indicator. M, magnetic direction indicator. E, emergency locator transmitter. And S, safety belts and shoulder harnesses for each front seat in aircraft manufactured after 1978. 19. What instruments are required? What instruments and equipment are required for VFR night flight? Oh, we did this before. Flaps here. For VFR night flight, all the instruments and equipment for VFR day flight are required, plus the following: fuses, flaps, landing light if the aircraft is operated for hire, anti-collision light system, precision lights, and source of electrical energy. 20. Who can perform maintenance on an aircraft? An AP mechanic and certified. FAA certified AP mechanic and an AP mechanic with an inspector authorization, an appropriately rated FAA certified repair station or the aircraft manufacturer. 21. Define preventative maintenance. That's just basically maintenance, taking care of your plane, just prevent anything going wrong. Preventative maintenance means simple or minor preservation operations and the replacement of small standard parts not involving complex assembly operations. Certified pilots, excluding student pilots, sport pilots, and recreational pilots, may perform preventative maintenance on any aircraft that is owned or operated by them, provided that the aircraft is not used in an air carrier service. 14 CFR Part 43 Appendix A identifies typical preventative maintenance operations, which includes such basic items as oil changes, wheel bearing lubrication, hydraulic fluid, brakes, landing gear system, and refills. Exam tip. Know where to look in the regulations for items approved for preventative maintenance. 14 CFR Part 43 Appendix A Paragraph C. preventative maintenance. Number 22. What logbook entry information is required of the person performing a preventative maintenance? All pilots who maintain or perform preventative maintenance must make an entry in the maintenance record of the aircraft. The entry must include a description of the work, the date of the completion of the work performed, and an entry of the pilot's name, signature, certificate number, and the type of certificate held. Okay, so we have the additional questions, the end of chapter 2. Additional study questions. Number 1. During pre-flight, you discover one of the position lights installed equipment isn't operative prior to a daytime flight. Can you legally conduct the flight? I would ask myself those questions and check the MEL for that plane, and if it's in the list that it's acceptable to fly the plane without that, then yes, it's safe to fly. If I don't feel safe, or if I answer no to any of those questions, I would defer it. Number 2. How can a pilot determine if all applicable airworthiness directives have been complied with for his or her airplane? Well, first you check to see what the current ADs are for your plane and the type. You would check the maintenance record, the logbook. And if they're around, just talk to the mechanic and make sure everything's been done, and inspect the plane yourself. 3. Explain how you will deactivate an item or system that has become inoperative in your airplane. Can you do it? Explain how you will deactivate an item or system that has become inoperative in your airplane. Can you deactivate any item or system in the airplane? What is required? So, first of all, I would make sure the switch is in the off position of whatever it is, and then pull the fuse for that item, and then put a label saying inoperative or broken, doesn't work. And to be honest, no, you can't deactivate any system. There are limitations because there's some items that you need for flight and for safe flight, so you can't disable the electricity towards your electrical items. I mean, you would have no radio and I mean, you can land. You just use those flashes from the control tower. They have I call it a ray gun, but it's a laser light. They flash in the sky, and they use that when you have no radio. 4. If the AFM for an aircraft you are about to fly is missing, what substitution may be? There is no substitution. You have to make sure that the manuals, the POH, and everything else is there. You need a handbook. You need the POH safety placards, recording of all the work that was done and performed. If any of those are missing, you cannot go flying. Like, the plane is not safe until you have them. 5. Are the AFM supplements required to be on board the airplane? Yes, once a plane has it, it's permanent. It's part of the plane. Number 6. As PIC, you have the responsibility for determining whether your aircraft is in a condition for safe flight. When flying rental aircraft, how can procedures regarding discrepancy records or score sheets affect the total risk of flight? If something is not right in the records, I would double check. Like if there's discrepancy in the record saying that the date of the last oil change or the fluids were done, and if the dates are off or if something is not correct, I mean, it's better to ask than assume, so I would go ahead and check. Number 7, you've just completed the first leg of a long cross country and notice that the oil level is approaching the 1 quart low mark. As a private pilot, can you add a quart of oil yourself, or is a mechanic required? I would check the list of preventative measures, but I believe that if it's part of the preventative maintenance, then a pilot can do that as long as you fill out the log and detail what was done, the time and the day and such, and what certificate I hold. So yes, a private pilot can do that. And 8, what are special airworthiness safety bulletins, SAIBs? Are they regulatory? They're the system that broadcasts the air directives. Like if there's an emergency one, emergency flight. So if there was something that caused a lot of planes to go down, faulty, they will send out a directive saying, "Hey, this part must be taken out of the plane because it's causing the planes to fall out of the sky." So that would be a bit special. Number 9, during your pre-flight inspection, you discovered that the left main tire on your aircraft has a large flat spot with nylon cord showing. You wisely decide that this is unacceptable and the tire should be replaced before flight. Do the regulations allow the pilot to perform this maintenance, or must it be performed by a licensed mechanic? This is a licensed mechanic job because it's more than preventative maintenance. Number 10, a 100-hour inspection was due at 3,302.5 hours. The 100-hour inspection was actually done at 3,309.5 hours. What is the next 100-hour inspection due? It will be done at 3,409.5 every 100 hours. And you got to include the time with that. So even though you went over it, you've got to include the overtime with that. And that's the end of 2. We've done 2 chapters already. Next is weather information. That's going to be fun. Just how many chapters are there? There's 9 chapters. Woo! So after the next chapter will be 1/3 done. I'm a slow reader, I know. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and get this uploaded. Thank you for watching. Thank you for bearing with my terrible reading. But hopefully it helps you as it helps me. Alright, catch you later.